thanks everyone for joining. We are recording. My name is Matthew Burke. I am based at the University of Vermont in Community Development and Applied Economics, also with a program called Leadership for the Ecozoic, which is based at UVM and McGill University. And I am pleased to join you all and for this last full session of our two-day um, convergence, Next Systems Teach-In Convergence. And this day is dedicated to the organizing of a teach-in. And this particular session is entitled How to Organize a Teach-In. So bring your questions at whatever level, at whatever, how far along you are. We are just 2 months out from our window for coordinating teach-ins. Of course, there's flexibility in that, but that's when many of us are planning, and I think that's what we'll be speaking to today. And by the way, we are not all experts in organizing teach-ins. So we are also happy to share from whatever perspective and whatever experience we have with respect to organizing teach-ins and specifically with our work at Next Systems and with the Next Systems Task Force, of which I am a member and many of the folks here on this panel are also members. So I appreciate you joining. Um, the the last day especially and today, I just want to say again the enthusiasm and the gratitude I have for all the effort and the work that went into it. It was a huge collaboration and a lot of people came together in a fairly short period of time. So yes, it can be done. I think in some ways it reflects the urgency of now. So let's bring that, but also at the same time, urgency means slowing down as well as people have commented. So let's take this opportunity to slow down, breathe together, and really understand where we are, what we're doing, how we're doing this together. That really is the definition of conspire. So let us breathe together and learn from one another and share experiences. Um, this particular session, again, how to organize a teach-in with respect to the Next Systems teach-in coordination. We have three broad topics that we're going to be addressing, and we will have speakers to each of these, and then we will go to the Q&A. So those topics include, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of the associations with the topics, but I believe we will have April starting, April Donor, and I'll ask each of you to just introduce yourself as we go. But April will speak to building your local teaching coalition and organizing committee. And then we will follow with Suren, how to organize wall-to-wall, mapping, list building, and outreach. And then Kathryn is going to bring us home with the teach-in program. What can a next system teach-in look like? And this was, in some sense, a continuation of our last session. If you weren't able to be there for that one, once the recordings are made available, I encourage you to go back and review that as well. And stick around for the session immediately after this, which will be a reflections on today and the full convergence and perhaps reflections pointing towards what's coming next. So with that, again, thank you. And I will turn it over to April.
Hi all, good afternoon. Thank you, Matthew, for heading this off with the statement that we are not experts in teaching organizing. So I'll reiterate that as well. So what I'll share will just be, it'll be some kind of overall helpful practices, some thoughts from my own current experience as I go about beginning to organize a teach-in here in Chicago. My background is in community building and community organizing outside of academic institutions, sometimes in partnership with. So that's just kind of my orientation and my skill base. Just in the big picture, kind of in building on a lot of what we've been talking about this morning leading up to now, I really see the teach-in process itself as one beautiful effort to build the body of the next system. And I think one of the things that's most compelling is that we are doing this globally, but locally rooted, right? And part of that is so my background in community building, especially in neighborhoods, is the work of making the invisible visible, right? The skills, the talents, the passions, the good work, the good contributions that are happening in a neighborhood, making those visible, connecting them intentionally, and creating opportunities for them to come alive and sync together. That's what makes a strong community. And that's, in my view, what I think of as building a strong next system as well. So that's kind of how I'm thinking of the next system teach-in process for myself and also as our shared effort across the world. So in terms of organizing a coalition or a committee, right, we all know we can't do everything alone as much as some of us try. So you will want a team, right? You'll want a team to try to bring your teach-in together, to make it locally relevant and context-based. So, there's a few structural ways you could go about it, depending on where you're coming from, whether you're in an academic institution where we're working within the community or both. So there's a coalition or a team could look a few different ways, right? It could be you already have a team of folks, an existing committee, and you decide as a committee that you will be really taking the responsibility for hosting this teach-in. You already work together well, you already know each other well, you're aligned. That's a perfectly fine way to go about it. It could also be a way of bringing a coalition together that doesn't already exist. So that could be within your institution, some folks from different departments. It could be across the community, it could be between your academy and folks in the community that you already work with. Kathryn had a great example of, bringing some nonprofits that work around energy transition, if my memory serves me, and bringing those folks together to imagine what a teach-in might look like. Also, of course, the history of teach-ins is student leadership, right? So also great examples shared earlier about bringing in classes and students to think about what do we want a teach-in to look like, right? So being really thoughtful about, who might you want represented in your group. And as Matt said, right, there's a fierce urgency right now, but this is also an opportunity to slow down. So while we do have, it's just 2 months away, for myself internally, I am trying to approach this with the long-term vision in mind, as well as like one of just my own internal values of, everything starts with and moves through relationship. So I'm thinking every step of the way of building my team of, this is a chance to deepen a relationship, right? So I'm coming up with my short list of folks who might really, have enough bandwidth and have enough internal investment in this question to want to actually help take on that responsibility of hosting a teach-in and organizing it. And then B, I'm thinking of it as, who are people that I want to deepen my relationship with and my own partnership with into the future as we actually work together to try to build this next system, right? And also I would say, trying not to worry too much if it really is a very short list, because usually what I find, like in any community building process, is you have a short list, if someone else has a short list, and then one other person has a short list, you have a larger list together. And as you go about, approaching folks to join this, I mean, I think this is probably common sense. A lot of us probably have different experience building committees and coalitions here. But, just having being willing to hear no or not right now as an answer and having some options on hand. So first it's, being very clear about what are you asking folks to do? What does being involved in your coalition look like? Right? Are you asking them to put time in the planning? Are you asking them to help get the word out? Right? Are you asking them to bring other partners on board? And then, right, on the next tier down, if they're not as available as you'd hoped, what are some other ways that they could be involved? So, for me, that next tier down is like, well, they don't want to help plan it, they don't have time to help plan it, or they're not sure enough about it. Would they just welcome the opportunity to present some of what they're doing, to be highlighted and showcased and uplifted as part of the teach-in? A lot of times people will light up. when I bring up that as an option, because as we know, a lot of people, especially here in the city, are somewhat overwhelmed and overtaxed. And then the other aspect of this, of the work of invitation and involvement and engagement, that I'm really leaning into is, for myself and for others, right? How do we think of this teach-in as a way to advance and amplify something that we're already working on? Right. So, maybe it's like, for example, with myself, I've been really wanting to get together other folks who practice asset-based community development, ABCD, which is my field in the city, because there's a lot of us, but we just don't often get together. We're trying to kind of build out a community of practice. So I'm thinking, wow, like, maybe if I write that into November Teach-In as a gathering of that's open to others who are interested, that's helping me accomplish something I already want to do. So kind of integration rather than an add-on to what myself and other people are doing. So that's, just one thought, right, on how do we keep these invitations from feeling like a burden, and helping to be creative and thoughtful with others about what we might do together. Um, and the other aspect of it is, right, how formally do people want to be involved? Do they want to have their name on things, or they want to more support behind the scenes? Especially given the vulnerable moment that a lot of folks in academic institutions, but also, right, other organizations and collectives are in, right? They might be willing to support and throw down, but they don't want their name listed on something. So I think leading with that sensitivity is really important. And so, beyond that, right, it's coming up with what is in your place, what will serve your purposes, right? What are some key issues that people are energized around locally, they're worried about, they're fighting, or they're trying to create. I know we mentioned mapping. I do think that's a wonderful stage to work through with your coalition once you've formed it, and thinking about, okay, who are the folks who are working in next system that we know about? Do we want to focus in just one arena? Is it around energy transition? Is it around building social infrastructure, right? Is it about resistance, or is it about the connectivity of many parts together, right? So what chunk are we taking on? Is there an issue or a theme that we're taking on? And then that can inform your mapping. And then, going from there to then explore together what do we want our teaching to look like, involving those partners to imagine, what assets do they bring, that we might activate and might become more meaningful by combining them together. And then, of course, right, there's just the logistical conversations to have of, nail down, like, what are the dates that we want to have them? Do we want to do a one-day event? Do we want to spread this out over 2 weeks? Again, I think if folks already have stuff that they are thinking to do that legitimately fits within the next system framework, right, this could be a way of tying things together. And maybe there's one extra thing that you do as part of your teach-in, right, whether it's a demonstration or a festival or a dinner. I know one really creative teach-in activity that I've heard from, I think it was from within this group, is the idea of just opening up some classes that fit under the next system theme to the community as one offering of a teach-in, right? So again, along those lines of trying not to have something be an add-on, but an integration into what work that people are already doing. And then there's, the question of getting space, what are the things that we need to do sooner than later, setting a date, finding spaces, right, drawing upon the relationships within your coalition to do that. And of course, really thinking about your purpose together, right? What are the goals that you all have within your own work? And then what are goals that you want to set together? I really appreciated Matt's listing of their purposes, right? Which it sounds like you've developed, they're very clear within your coalition, are to build community, both inside and outside of the campus, to build a body of work that's both locally generated, but also can be sharpened and refined collectively beyond the local. And then also providing an experiential learning opportunity that's interesting, that's fun, that's engaging, that involves the exchange of skills. So I will pause there and just see what other advice and um, examples folks from within the team have, especially those who are farther along in their process of bringing a committee or coalition together for a teach-in.
Thanks, April. That's fantastic. And that really helps get us from perhaps where a lot of people are, just as an individual or a small couple of folks who are just starting to think about this, and how you can begin to develop that sort of core team, that committee or organizing group that can bring it from just an idea to actually starting to take actions and bring other people in. So that was a really helpful starting point to our discussion. I think we'll go directly now to Suren and then Kathryn, and then we'll turn to Q&A. But I would encourage people to continue to post questions as you think of them, and then we'll get to those towards the after we hear from Kathryn. So Suren, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, April. I'm going to talk a little bit about mapping of the campus, and I think that the lessons that I will try to share is applicable to working within communities too, but it would need some rethinking. In addition to that, I'm going to address the list building dimension of our work. And in order to do so, and this is to signal to the team working on the technology, I am going to be sharing screen to talk a bit more about the list building piece. So let me begin first, though, with the recognizing and mapping key stakeholders. Why engage in mapping in the first place, right? It could seem like, and I know many nonprofit organizations and community groups often come together, and at the beginning they undergo or do some strategic planning and some mapping of the community, right? And maps are obviously useful. It helps you get to where you want to go to. It also helps you figure out who you're close to, right? Who are the people I go to in order to get to another place, right? That's how we do mapping. It's oftentimes our work doesn't involve straight lines. So another reason, apart from this, from getting to where we want to go to, is getting the resources where we want to go to, right? Famous question, why do people rob banks? Because that's where the money is, right? Same thing, we engage in mapping to understand where the resources we need are, right? And so I'm going to just share a screen briefly, which will show you a list of the stakeholders that I think we need to be thinking about when we engage in a mapping exercise. So 1 second. So I got a warning when trying to share screen, which is it's going to stop the computer sound on. Is that okay? Yep. Okay. So from a campus point of view, right, we can think about several different stakeholders on campus, the most obvious ones being the students. And they tend to be the primary audience, but they are definitely not the only audience.
Suren, sorry.
Oops, go ahead.
One moment. Now I'm just seeing a list of documents. There was a slide that showed up
Oh, I
initially.
see a shared screen. Whoops.
Yeah.
Okay. That should be.
There you are.
Okay. Apologies, everyone.
Thank you.
So, students tend to be the first or most important audience, often seen as the most important actors on campus. They are not the only ones. Nonetheless, we need to recognize them for their diversity and think about how different groups of students are impacted in different ways by the questions for the next system. Today, there are many kinds of questions on campus, including whether or not some part of the campus has a right to be in the country in which the campus is located, right? There are all sorts of immigration questions, but we can think more broadly about student needs and the extent to which they are being met on campus, and to what extent they coincide with the needs of people off campus, right? So these are often expressed in terms of different student organizations. So if you're thinking about how you map the student community, right? Instead of trying to map the whole community, think about the groups that you are most interested in working with because they happen to be the most impacted by the kinds of issues that you are concerned with. I hate to leave it that abstract, but in the interest of time, I am going to move on. The next group to think about are faculty, right? And if you're a student, we tend not to recognize the diversity among faculty. We tend to recognize them as being organized into different departments, etc. But we don't recognize the various degrees of status and power within the faculty, right? And for example, most students don't know the difference between adjunct faculty and tenure track faculty and all the various rankings between them. These are important questions, and they help us think through the problems of the next system and the university itself, right? And that's a whole other topic. So I won't spend too much time in it, except to say that corresponding to the different statuses are often insurgent organizing projects that are worth attaching our next system wagon to, right? The other more permanent, more durable part of the campus are the staff and the trade unions that represent the staff. You know, when we were discussing earlier today the history of teachings, we went through several hundred generations of students, but oftentimes staff on campus can be people with a lot of institutional memory. And as such, they are people you'd want to be connected with. And so that would be another layer of the campus worth reaching out to. The administration, as distinct from the faculty and from the staff, a completely different set of actors within the campus, right? One of the reasons that they're important to think about and map is they are often the most important gatekeepers on campus. They have access to a lot of the resources that you will need from getting space to offering honoraria to speakers to also crediting courses and that kind of thing. So you do want to understand the administration and understand the sympathetic people within the administration. Remember, the administration can create whole departments, etc. In theory, right, faculty and the administration are engaged in some sort of co-governance, but in reality, the administration is where the power, or at least some of the power, lies. In addition to that, there's also the alumni. And again, as with students, you want to think of the alumni as a very diverse group, and there may be alumni associations based on what you are interested in. And they too may be a bridge to people outside of the university, but with a connection to the university. And also they may be too a source of resources, right? You can also imagine a host of other kinds of special interest groups attached to the campus. And you can also think about community partners. I would say, from my experience, working with neighboring communities and their associations, people who are impacted by the fact that the university generates just a huge of through traffic and the externalities of the university, the resources of the way in which the university operates impacts other communities right around it. All of these are interested actors, and these are people with whom you can build relationships with, right? I do want to say, so I had a diagram here, and that's just a very formal layout of the administrative structure, most of which is completely invisible to new students. Even students graduating don't know much about these different structures, right? But there are also parallel structures, and I just want to identify some of them. There are faculty associations, professional associations, etc. All of these are different strategic points where you can impact the university and build alliances with, or if necessary, use them as targets, right? You can think of, for example, outside vendors in a positive sense. You can imagine community-supported agriculture providing food to the campuses, right? So when you do a full mapping of the campus, and the mapping is never complete when you merely start with the physical map. You want to know who in your community has links to these particular components of the campus scene, right? I just leave it at that. I would like to move on to list building, but I'll be happy to answer more questions about or take comments on how we would go about mapping the community and the campuses. When April was talking about building the coalition, she had a dynamic component to it, right? You start with the people you know, and it grows out from there, right? So you can imagine that as you grow, your understanding of the map gains higher resolution. You learn more about the particular actors, right? So mapping isn't a one-off kind of thing. It's a useful initial conversation, but it's one that's going to need to be repeated several times over. Okay, I'm just going to turn to list building. The question that I'm going to answer with list building is, how can our next system project, our task force, help you build your local lists? And the way we're going to be able to do that is by providing registration pages for your events. The registration pages will gather data, and then it will allow you to, after we provide you with the data, it will allow you to reach back out to people and build a dialogue with people in the run-up to the actual teachings. So I'm going to again share my screen, and I'm going to show you the back end in order that you may understand what kind of data we can collect and how we're best able to assist. So I'm going to share screen again, and give me a second. Okay. So this is a dummy page, right? It doesn't reflect a real event, but we can create a page like this that would allow you to collect the, first name, last name, email address, and zip information for people. If you wanted to collect the phone number as an optional category or field, we can add that to it, right? But it will, we create a page which will show the location of the event or events, so we can make this more complicated. We only have a start date and time here. You could add end dates and time and other bits of information. Your banner, whatever it is. This is obviously just an AI-generated image. And then a description of what we're planning. And of course, it could be a lot more detailed. And then we can also include information about the co-sponsors right next to the Next System Studies field. I'm going to just change screen to the back end a bit. So if I'm creating an event, this is this is the information I'm seeing, right? I'll have to give it a title, and so you would provide the team with the title, right, and all the basic details about the event. We can provide the host contact information, and it can generate a map. If you're not comfortable with the map or have objections to using well, this is OpenStreetMap, so you won't have any objections to it, right? Then we can add a banner image, etc., provide whatever text you want us to provide to describe the event, and then add your activities, more information about the activity. We can also cap the enrollment or set up a field for people to be waitlisted, right? And then the information would come to you, right? After the event, we will get more information, right? Such as the number of, or in real time, we'll always have information about the people who've RSVP'd and track the performance of this individual page. You'll also have the ability to copy code and put it into the web page for your own event or for your organization's event. And this could be shared with all the partner organizations in the coalition. So this would be a quick way to build your list using the resources of the Next System Teach-In Task Force. Okay, I'll stop at that point in terms of the list building piece. So very practically then, right, in real time, you'll be able to collect information. We'll share it back to you, and you'll be able to, if you need to, send emails to people who are going to attend the event. You can do a simple bulk email working with us in terms of reaching the people who've RSVP'd, right? That kind of thing. Okay, I will stop at that point.
Thank you so much, Suren. That's an amazing amount of work already that's gone into creating that. And I think it really makes it clear that none of us, as this relates to what April is saying, none of us are doing this alone. There are a lot of people who are already working on this and who are going to be available. And I think you had also mentioned one-on-one sessions between now and November. Did you want to say something on that before we turn to Kathryn?
Yes, thank you for reminding me about that, Matt. So we are going to schedule office hours, which we'll advertise in the follow-up to this convergence. We'll have them regularly scheduled for at least, probably Friday afternoons through the teach-ins. However, in addition to that, people will have the capacity to make individual appointments should they not be able to reach us during the office hour period. So the office hours will be a set of drop-in times. And during those office hours, any of the organizing challenges that you have experienced, we'll try to troubleshoot it together. And if we can't come up with a satisfactory answer, we'll reach out to the group's wisdom to inform solutions going forward.
Fantastic. And I know from the previous session, a question came up about shared promotion too. So maybe we'll hold that question in mind too for our Q&A here today, promotion and outreach. But let's hear from Kathryn in terms of what some of this, once you're at the point of actually doing the teach-in program, what that can look like in greater detail. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Kathryn Milun. I am an anthropologist. I teach at the University of Minnesota. And I'm part of the task force, and we did some exploratory and exemplary experiments on teach-ins in May. And so I held one here at my university. So I'm going to share just a couple images. I'll screen share that, what we did. And this may be useful to those of you at universities to be able to really work with students and community and kind of bring them together using a teach-in format and thinking using Next Systems as a kind of a set of guiding principles a little bit. So I'm also going to begin before I go to my screen share, to say that I really, what April said in terms of guiding principles of the idea in a teach-in of making the invisible visible. And then another guiding principle, something Ben said, is that with the Wisconsin ideal, is that the public university, I'm at the University of Minnesota, has a mandate and a responsibility to serve the public good of the whole state. So with those two kind of principles, that guiding us at the university, if we are faculty, to, feel empowered to do that work. So now I'll just share screen. And so in May, I used classes that I teach. Hold on, I have to kind of make this smaller so I can see everything. Yeah. All right, so I used a large anthropology class that I teach as the way to begin with the audience that I knew I was going to have, and a smaller class of participatory method students in anthropology to actually be hosts with me of this teach-in. And so we talked about this as a democracy teach-in. This was the kind of one of the flyers that went out, but we were really intent on having art that would carry and hold and be takeaway items to hold the ideas that we were talking about. So the way we thought about this we were thinking of social ecological systems and the invisible nature of problems and then making solutions visible. So again, I really wanted to bring something that was very much in the student's experience already. And many of the systems we're talking about are also based in technologies, and the problems are there, and some of the solutions are going to be aided and assisted from there. So we started with pollution. We thought about pollution, and we thought about three kinds of areas of pollution and solutions we could work on, so that the solution side would be introduced as next systems. So we talked about attention pollution with social media, and the students created, with a set of exercises in class, they created and tried to find shared images that they thought would be, let me see here, for their peers relevant. So this is a Google book that all of them kind of had as not a Google book, a Chromebook or something that all of them had. I never did in high school and middle school. And so there are a number of things, and we had a read material and had a discussion of the problem area itself of this type of platform capitalism and what was happening with that in terms of their attention. So we had attention pollution, and then when we thought about solutions for that, we did visit a local cafe that is, are growing in many towns. Ours is called the Lock Cafe here, and it's really trying to bring people out of their, basements and bedrooms and wherever they're playing in social media, single player games, and come and play games together and interact at the cafe. And so we had that person, we went and visited him and the cafe, the owners, we brought them to our teach-in for tabling. So we did a lot of things with our community as to how they were trying to bring that kind of relationship back into into the life that had been taken away and isolated from people. So that was the first thing. And the second thing, and I'm going to go to what our program then ended up being. So the second thing was water pollution. So mind pollution, then water pollution. And there we got our neighboring Ojibwe tribe, Fond du Lac tribe. And this is one of this is one of the symbolic petition of the Chippewa chiefs, making a petition based on a treaty. So we brought in artwork from the tribe, but we also had somebody from the tribe come and talk. And in this case, water pollution, a very important thing that happened in our area was that sulfide from mining. We're a large mining area, and the tribes around here are one of the only places in the world where wild rice, or as the Ojibwe say, manuman, is grown. And the sulfide process in mining is killing the manuman. And the Ojibwe say the health of the manuman is the health of the people. So our speaker came and talked about the food source of wild rice and the kind of worldview and thinking that the Ojibwe have about relationship to food, land, and forests, waters. And then we also talked about the standard that has now been created in our region, the legal standard for only the amount of sulfide in the water where it is shown that wild rice can continue to thrive. Now, the mining industry is trying to get that changed, but that is the standard. It comes from the wild rice thriving in our area. So that presentation of a solution that comes out of a worldview, a practice, and a lot of work behind, for decades to enact that out of another worldview. That was really important solution and part of next systems thinking. So again, it was always about helping people see how this was part of the next solution. The second one then was we talked about energy transition here in my area, which is to create a model, a community trust ownership model for solar, so that solar savings can go into a community trust fund, and then that those savings can be governed locally, and you can use an annual participatory budgeting distribution mechanism through the schools, and kids and others will be able to of a commonwealth from the sun through solar, and measure it, do STEM things, but also be able to have a source of income for that. And so we talked about that basically in the schools, and how again this in a next system, that this integration of resources, natural resources, to bring solar, the sun's energy, and wind and others into it as commonwealth, that can then be governed with the right technologies and etc. Locally. So those are the three things, the problems, solutions as next systems. The other thing we did then, after we did that, we had students. We had for the three speakers who were there. After each speaker, this was a 3-hour event. We had the speaker and tables. We had a room that could hold up to 150, 200 with tables. Students sat at tables. They brought friends. We connected it to several of the community action groups in our region who work on climate energy activity, the newly developing Indivisible group. We wanted this to be intergenerational. We have University for Seniors and several other things. So we tried to go to and bring those groups together. They would be sitting at tables, students and these groups, and the students used a method called a World Cafe method, and I will put this in the PDF that shows you how to use this method. But the students that were hosts at the table from one of my classrooms, they used it for after each speaker. There was discussion at a table whose aim was to create shared understanding of what the speaker had said, and also shared visioning on the solution. So shared visioning for solutions. So they were geared towards this. It was very interactive, and I'll say here's the participatory process design that we used in our teach-in. I'm gonna click this and put this put this into the I'll put that put that into the chat, and we can figure out a way to share. So so again, we with using a World Cafe thing, you have a big piece of paper at the table, a giant piece of paper, and you have some pens, and everybody's writing down ideas, etc. You can collect those then afterwards and have data and other things that the students and others can analyze. We can do a kind of an assessment afterwards to understand that better. Also, in between, we had breaks. We had a local bluegrass band playing during our breaks. We had groups in all these areas, including for the attention pollution. We actually had faculty come and talk about how their classrooms were changing. What is the next systems classroom when we have ChatGPT? And so they were talking about, the issue in our university that we've become, our university has kind of made a default that everybody has to buy ebooks and there's some kind of arrangement they now have with that whole textbook corporation industry. And so there's a whole resistance to that failed administratively, but we in our classrooms are creating, we have power in our classrooms to create, maybe the next systems of what it is to be able to teach again, without that technology if we want. So how we are going to do this, so we had people coming, teachers and others showing that. And also people were tabling. So in between breaks, students and others would go to the tablers and talk to people from the cafe, from all these other organizations. And we also had food. I wrote a grant at the university. You should have to do this a couple months ahead of time. So I had $3,000 for this, for food and for the music and stipends for speakers. And so this is, with about 3 months of planning ahead of time to integrate into my classroom. This is how we did it. We again made sure that we, were making the invisible visible, that the solutions work. We were able to frame as next systems. We made time for the audience so that they were interactive and we were helping them create relationships, and that next systems work was relational, intergenerational. We showed what kinds of relationships would be there in a next systems context, including the relationality that our Native American speakers were bringing in terms of relation to the ecological world, which was a key part of our teaching, was the social ecological relationship building. So yeah, I think I can stop there and see if there are any questions, but we use several kind of next systems thinking. I just want to remind everybody so how diverse it is for the next systems thinking is that participatory budgeting, having much more local decision making in what is in our community finances, using wild rice as a standard, and et cetera, how to put that into a administrative context, and then the classroom. So we found a way to again have a thematic that would allow us to bring a lot of things together, make visible the system, the dominant system, and then try to make visible the next systems and alternative systems that were present. And I'll end there and take any questions people have. And again, I'll put the document that we use for participatory work at our session into the chat.
Wow. Thank you, Kathryn. That was fantastic. And definitely some complimentary notes in the chat as well. I'm so glad this was recorded because I will have to go back and view all of this. And you may be inviting more outreach from this great experience and sharing. We will turn to questions, so please go ahead and drop your questions. We do have about 10 minutes. We do have a pretty hard stop at the hour because we're going to shift to the final piece. I have a question if others don't, but I did want to just very briefly reflect on some of the broad points that are being made here, which is so much of this depends on relationships and relationship building, whether it's starting with that small core group, as April was getting at, the small group that can and does change the world, to not only then who we're working with, but also importantly, how we're working together. Suren brought in a lot of information in terms of the support and the way that we can coordinate across these different sites. And then Kathryn brought in so many fantastic examples of how we can actually prefigure a next systems in all its beautiful diversity in the here and now. So thank you for those examples. Let me just check in to see. I don't see any questions at the moment, but I did then just want to follow up on a question from the previous session that I don't feel like we gave enough attention to yet that could be practically valuable, which is a question of promotion and outreach, how we might be coordinating some of those efforts. And while maybe I'll start with Suren on that, but as we're addressing that question, please again feel free to drop in other questions, and we'll get to as many as we can.
I'm sorry, Matt, can you repeat your question?
Yes, there was a previous question on promotion. So how can we coordinate some of the promotion and the efforts? And then you had also started to touch on the question of outreach. I know there's an organizing guide, and I also know there are efforts to develop and share content that can be used in that respect as well. And the website, there's a lot of things going on that people may not be aware of with that.
Yeah. I would say that the central resource is the nextsystem.org website as a place to get materials from to use in your own promotional work. In addition to that, when thinking about promoting your activity, I would start with thinking about the resources that are immediately available on campus, right? So I think about student newspapers, podcasts, department bulletin boards, and all the various public platforms that are available, right? In addition to the various campus-based resources, there are broader social media resources that you want to think about depending on who your team is, right? So it might be more appropriate for you to reach your intended audience via, say, a TikTok video or something like that. But of course, that will depend on exactly who your audience is and who are the people that you're working with, right? What we can do, though, is say you develop some material, it would be useful for us to be able to share back your material to the rest of the community. And I think that's something that the task force can prioritize, creating a repository where people share their resources, their publicity, etc. We can also create templates for people to use for media advisories, press releases, etc. Right? So I do think that, in the run-up to the teachings, we'll have developed all the resources people would need, and we could also share those where we haven't already created them.
Thank you for that. And April is asking to remind us that this can happen outside of the university context as well. Much of the organizing effort has been on university campuses, but this can also be community-led. And we heard an example of that from Suren. And there are others too that are organizing in that way. So certainly can happen in a variety of different contexts. Maybe we can also share the link to the web page or the website as well. I wanted to check in. I'm not seeing questions right now. I wanted to open it up to Deissy, Lizah, Gabriel, or Ben. If you had any comments on what's been shared or additional points that you'd like to bring in. And then I think we will turn to closing pretty soon. Yeah, Deissy, go ahead.
Yeah, I have an additional comment that I would like to make in regards to the question of the promotion. I know that is the the way you reply to the question is when applied to university campuses, but my experience as an international organizer of the team, trying to make the teachings happening in places like South America that are not necessarily happening in campuses. I think one thing that I can share with you is that people already have their own tools and ways of promoting the teachings. And I think that's something that as our next system task force or organization, we should definitely consider. They need other type of support, more connected to bandwidth maybe, but in terms of how to promote their teachings, it's also good to know that we can actually learn from them if we do enough and deep listening. So I just wanted to add that little comment.
Yeah, great. Important points too. Thank you, Deissy. Ben, any closing on, I see you've been sharing a lot of links and resources in the chat. Thank you for that. I encourage people to check that out. And I think with the recording, we will also make the chat available as well. In April, I saw your hand up as well.
There was a question in the chat about available sort of I think it was timelines and other things. And so I was just sharing some of the materials from the teach-in at Santa Barbara, which was a quite organized teach-in, and you can get a sense of some of what was done there. I should say there are other files and documents that exist elsewhere, but it was a very organized process. And then also a set of resources from the sort of last round of democracy teach-ins, which was in 2003, that actually produced the International Books Not Bombed Student Strike, came out of those teach-ins. And there are many resources in there that would be quite useful. I should say, I mean, there's so much that I've shared these a number of times, and I think people have gotten deluged with them. So there is some labor that needs to be done in going through and seeing what language and what materials are useful and what we can just simply lift and edit and what may not be. But there is a lot there. There's a lot of work that people have done from those earlier rounds that I think is useful. And then just behind me, just because of the comment about the Wisconsin idea, I was looking around and I found this from La Follette's Weekly, which is now known as the Progressive Magazine. And I've got to find out who this political scientist was, Ernst Mayr, who is not the same Ernst Mayr who was the leader of the Communist Party in Germany. But he was, it's basically the University of Wisconsin helping to transform cities, to have cities play a leading role in building the Commonwealth in Wisconsin. So I got to find this guy and his writings.
Thanks, Ben. And we may need to make some of those links. I did request access just to make sure. You might need to enable access for some folks. Yeah. I'll go to April and then we will close this session down and make time for the next.
Yeah, two quick thoughts. One is that I just want to also encourage us to think of those drop-in hours as ways that not only you can come and kind of get ideas and troubleshooting from our team, but to hopefully there'll be 2 or 3 other people there who are also in their own mode of experimentation and trying stuff out. Just to Deissy's point, right? People have great tools and practices of their own that they already use or are trying out. So it could really be a good skill share and mutual inspiration space if we utilize them as such. And the other thing is to also, think of us as a support team also as far as connectors, right? We have a lot of our own relationships and folks that we are connected to across the globe who we know are passionate about this work. So if you're kind of casting about for, who might I work with in my area, we might know someone, right? We might not, but we might. So part of, we're also trying to map the larger system together. So this is an opportunity to, put our heads together and think about who exists, how do we make the invisible visible through this process together. So think of us as a resource in that way, please.
And to that end, thank you, April. To that end, should people wish to connect, follow up, get involved, what's the best way to do that? How should we encourage them to reach out and get in touch? Gabriel, Ben, Suren.
I'm wondering about Gabriel, if Gabe's able to come online here. But Suren would, anybody.
I'd say visit nextsystem.org and there's a place to register. Once you register with the website for the teachings, we will then reach back out to you and follow up with materials, etc. So that would be the most to do it.
Because I believe within the registration, you can indicate what level of involvement you might be interested in. Yes.
Yes, you can on the interest form.
Yep. Mm. Very good. Well, we are at the hour. Thank you all so much. And thank you for joining. And this will be made available. And I certainly will be viewing it at least several times. So thanks everyone for their contributions. I look forward to the next one.